but from them I learned about communal living, and that became a big thing for me. Living in a commune, playing Christian rock, loving Jesus, being pacifist, it was all starting to come together. And kind of jump over the rest of my teen years, we actually moved back to Texas, and I talked about I'm from Texas, and you may hear me say that, I've actually only lived in Texas about a quarter of my life, and yet I still feel like I'm a Texan in a lot of ways, because my dad was from Texas, my mother from Texas, all my extended family's from there. But I didn't live in Texas that much. We went back to Texas at a certain point because my dad lost the church he was at and didn't have another one to go to, so he moved back with his family. And then they moved on to California, and I stayed in Texas. And at this point, my dad had actually changed denominations. He went from the Assemblies of God, which were your pretty conventional Pentecostals, to the Church of God, which were them foot-washing Pentecostals, who had bishops. They were a little more Methodist than we were, more Baptist, they were more Methodist. That's the way it's described. And while in the Church of God, I went to college, at a Church of God college for one semester, and met my wife, Teresa.
What's the school?
West Coast Christian College in Fresno, California. And that's actually the first time I saw Res Band in a concert. They came to Fresno while I was there, and that was just awesome. There were a couple other Jesus freak bands around, Servant, that had a commune in Oregon. I was really connecting into this whole Jesus freak commune network. And we met, we got engaged, we got married when I was 19. She had just finished her BA, and I gave up on doing my BA to get married. Now, I hate to say this with my daughter in the room, but Pentecostals are supposed to be virgins till they get married, and, well, I didn't want to be a virgin anymore, so I got married. And despite that, there is real love, and we've been together 26 and a half years, or 20, I forget, 82. We got married in 82. At a certain point, my need to be in a Christian community began to really take off. I kind of had a rift with my father, because he had actually left California, moved back to Abilene to take over his dad's church when his dad retired. And so my dad was back taking over that church. I was in that church with my new bride, because we got married in Abilene, went back to the hometown to get married. And I had a rift because my radical Christianity just wasn't fitting. So we actually ended up moving from Abilene to Dallas, Texas, which is where Melissa was born. And I met my first Mennonites. And this was a fortuitous thing, because eventually I would move to be a part of a Mennonite Christian commune. So that this passion to serve Jesus, to be nonviolent, to be in a commune, because I believe that was what I needed to do. That was how my spiritual forces in my life were directing me. So in 1986, when Melissa was not even a year old, we moved to Evanston, Illinois, to be a part of Reba Place Church, and which had a commune as part of its church. The church had both non-communal and communal members. And we were there since from 86 to 96 or 95. We actually, I think, moved in 95 into Chicago, out of Evanston, because it became clear to me that I just wasn't fitting into that commune. I never actually gave up any of my worldly possessions to the commune, because I had a different view of where my life should go. I should go back. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to get my degree. I wanted to go on to that. And they felt like I had a wife and a daughter, and I should get a regular job and pay for that. I've always thought that was a profoundly short-sighted on the leadership's part to decide not to support my decision to go to school. But they made it. For whatever reasons, they made it. I also, however, I don't want to overemphasize the negative aspect of that. I was healed at multiple levels by my experience at Reba Place. My father, and I haven't really talked about, was a very depressed and angry person. He was very gifted in this pulpit, and so he would go from one church to another, but after a few years, his own demons would sort of sabotage his relationship to the congregation, and he'd move on. And he was very, his father was my grandfather had actually had so much shit in his life, and growing up in an abusive home himself, that was not Pentecost. My grandfather did not grow up in a Pentecostal home. He grew up in basically a dysfunctional, father abandoned them, died at the racetrack, Wild West dysfunctional family. And my grandfather, the Pentecostal church saved him from all that, but the Pentecostal church is not very good at dealing with inner demons. They, you just pray a little bit more and read the Bible a little bit more, and that'll help you. What you need, what I needed was therapy. My dad never really got any therapy. My grandfather definitely, he did. My grandfather actually had a nervous breakdown and was in a mental institution for about a year or so. My dad talks about that as a turning point. My dad was about 16 when that happened. And he said when my grandfather came home from the mental hospital, they said he was a totally different person. He didn't recognize him. He didn't act the same way. And I think how sad that my grandfather probably achieved a measure of healing and health, but it was too late for my father to benefit from that. At Reba Place, this is the tough part. I was wounded. I was angry, even though I was a pacifist and a hippie and a flower child and wanted to live in a commune. I was angry and frustrated with life and depressed. And when Melissa was a baby, I got so angry at her one time over something stupid. I mean, I nearly wanted to throw her through a window. And that's when I woke up. Wait a minute, something's wrong there. And I went and started seeing a counselor. I got put on an antidepressant. And that was what I was at Reba for. I thought I was there because of the commune and the peace and the hippie and the following Jesus. I was there to get healed. And was in therapy for 6, 7, 8 years. I can't really count it off the top of my head. I got on medication, and Reba Place was had sort of taken on the idea of inner healing as a spiritual practice. And it makes sense. You've got a commune with all these people, many of whom are wounded and broken, and you're trying to make them get along with each other and, living in these households in very close quarters. And it just was natural that they turned to psychology, but they had to Christianize it, so it was inner healing. And that changed my life. That saved my life, probably. Who knows what, if I hadn't found something like that. I mean, my father carried on, although I think in the end his demons killed him. He died in 2005 of multiple conditions brought on by obesity. And there's John Bradshaw, who's a counselor on inner woundedness and inner child, said that if you don't heal your pain, you eat it. Overeating, or you drink it. Alcohol. That was our family addiction. My great-grandfather had been an alcoholic, but the rest of us had different addictions. My father was food.